Listen, chapter 15 of the Hot Potato Man and Other Matters.
What's a hot potato?
These titles are twisted.
The titles are odd. Okay, let's see what happens though. The soldiers had passed by. Following the river, Jimmy ventured toward the city. Prince Brat strode along beside him. Soon as I can, I aim to give you the slip, Jimmy warned. You'll be on your own. The prince said nothing. The tide was low, and they traveled out of sight of the road, below a grassy embankment. In the distance, against billowing white clouds, stood a jackstraw jumble of ships' masts. You can fend for your own self, can't you? Jimmy asked suddenly. Of course I can, answered the prince in a stinging voice. I don't need flocks of servants to fetch and carry for me. It's settled then. Settled? Skip off any time you like. With the tide out, a wide, muddy flat lay exposed. From long habit, Jimmy kept his eyes peeled for treasure. Sandpipers scattered like mice before him. He spotted a barrel stave and pounced upon it. Trash, remarked the prince. What are you doing? Mudlarking. What? I've got to eat, don't I? If I can collect enough driftwood, I can sell it as firewood. The prince shrugged and walked on ahead. Jimmy gazed after him for a moment. What did a prince know about living off the streets? His meals had always appeared on china plates and silver trays as if by magic. Left to himself, he'd starve. It's not my worry, Jimmy muttered. What? That's what. If you get hungry enough, you'll scramble back to the castle. The prince glared back at Jimmy and then stooped down to retrieve the broken leg of a chair from the mud. Is this worth anything? Jimmy nodded. Before long, the two of them had collected 3 more barrel staves and then the back of the chair. Then Jimmy found something even more valuable to him, a bent and battered bird cage. He could go into business with that. Straightened out, it would hold rats. They rounded a bend, and the crack of a whip sounded in the air like a firecracker. Jimmy crawled up the embankment for a look. A weary old coach was mired in a mud hole on the road. The coachman, looking just as old and rickety, held the reins of his 2-horse team and cracked his whip in the air again. Pull, gents, be good lads. It's me own fault not leading you around this bog. Me eyesight ain't what it was. Is it, old tars? Jimmy watched for another moment as the horses tried to pull the coach free. The coach was enameled blue with yellow lettering painted on the door panel. Captain Harry Nips, Hot Potato Man. Jimmy crawled over the embankment. A ride to the city would suit him fine. Sir, would you take on a passenger? Here, let me set these barrel staves under this wheel. Don't mind if you do, said Captain Nips. I'm late for the fair as it is. Where else have we heard the fair?
I heard it before, but I don't remember when.
Wait.
No, in this book.
I'm not talking about.
Who else talked about the fair?
Jiminy Cricket. I don't know.
The girl with the dancing bear.
Oh, the girl.
Yeah, she's a circus people.
Yeah.
Jimmy busied himself laying a firm track for the wheels. Prince Brat watched from the edge of the embankment. You must be carrying a heavy load, Jimmy cried out. Try again, Captain. The old man cracked his whip. The horses strained and the coach rolled up out of the bog. Hop in, lad. Jimmy opened the door and saw that the coach was heavily loaded with raw potatoes and a huge iron kettle. Jimmy settled himself as best he could, and the coach lurched forward. At last, Jimmy thought, you're free of the prince. But he couldn't resist a backward glance. Prince Brat was standing in the center of the road. He dropped his load of driftwood and merely gazed at the receding coach. Jimmy straightened and folded his arms. The prince wasn't his lookout any longer, but he'd stood there like a wounded bird. Blast him. A prince hadn't a cockeyed notion how to fend for himself. Stop, Captain, Jimmy shouted. We left me friend behind. So does he feel bad for him?
Yeah.
The Hot Potato Man pulled up the reins. Jimmy leaned out a window. With an arm, he motioned Prince Brat to come along. For an instant, Jimmy thought he saw a smile flash across the prince's face, but it had vanished by the time that heir to the throne joined him inside the coach. They rode in silence. Jimmy wondered what had possessed him to refer to Prince Brat as his friend. Friend? Cows would give beer first.
What?
What does that mean?
Cows said they would never be friends.
They would never be friends, because could a cow ever make beer?
No, it makes milk.
It makes milk, right.
Yeah, make beer.
So he's saying they're never going to be friends. Then, minutes later, the coach rocked to a sudden halt. Stand and deliver, came a shout. A pair of highwaymen were training pistols on Captain Nips. Jimmy hardly had to peer out. The voice was familiar. It was Hold Your Nose Billy and Cutwater.
No,
What does he
ma'am.
mean cut water?
No,
Does he
ma'am.
cut water for
I don't know.
Oh,
Okay,
he does.
so now they've gotten a ride. They helped the guy out there. They've gotten a ride, and then now they're stopped in the middle of the road by Hold Your Nose Billy and Cutwater.
They
Oh,
got
no, no.
We'll find out what happens tomorrow.
Weird.